personal assistant, entered the wrong room, and slept in her millionaire boss's bed, and he fell madly in love. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Lily always knew that working for Henry Ford would be a challenge. He was cold, direct, and had a stare that could freeze even the hottest summer day. As his executive assistant, she handled his demands without flinching, but she also knew that a single mistake could cost her job. Now, here they were, at a luxurious resort where Henry had just closed $1 million deal with top investors in the tech industry. The work was done, and it was time to celebrate. "Even you can relax today, Lily," Henry said, something she rarely heard from him. Seated at an upscale beachfront restaurant, surrounded by other business people, they toasted with expensive wine. The waiter barely had time to refill their glasses before Henry emptied his. Lily had never seen her boss drink like that. The man who was always in total control of everything was now laughing, making sarcastic remarks, and even complimenting the food. "Incredible. I never thought you had a soul, Mr. Ford," Lily teased, swirling the wine in her glass. "And I never thought you knew how to relax, Miss Lily," Henry shot back with a half-smile. Time passed too quickly, and before Lily realized it, the dinner had turned into an informal contest of who could handle more glasses of wine. "You're drunk," Henry commented, pointing his fork at her. "You're drunk!" Lily shot back, pointing her butter knife at him. Henry narrowed his eyes as if he was about to argue, but then shook his head and let out a muffled laugh. "I'm heading to my room," he announced, standing up. And he left. A bit unsteady, but he left. Lily stayed a little longer, barely aware of her own state. The combination of expensive wine, the ocean breeze, and a work-free night had completely melted away her self-control. By the time she finally decided to leave, she could barely walk straight. "All right, just get to my room, take off my shoes, and sleep." Simple, she mumbled to herself, stumbling through the hallway. The problem? She had no idea where her room was. The numbers on the doors seemed to dance before her eyes. "What kind of font is this? Who designed numbers that keep moving?" she grumbled, squinting. And then one door was slightly open. "Wow. Thank you, universe." She smiled at no one in particular and stepped inside. She kicked off her shoes, tossed her bag somewhere random, and threw herself onto the soft bed as if diving into a cloud. "Best hotel ever," she murmured before passing out. The problem? That wasn't her room. The next morning, Henry Ford woke up to something moving beside him. His first thought, "This is a weird dream." His second, "Is my pillow breathing?" His third, "My pillow has hair?" His eyes widened instantly. "What the?" Lily rolled onto her side and lightly smacked him in her sleep. Henry looked up as if searching for a divine explanation. He knew he had drunk more than he should have, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Lily was lying in his bed, breathing peacefully, completely unaware of the disaster she had caused. Henry ran a hand down his face, trying to piece together the fragments of the previous night. But before he could figure anything out, Lily started waking up. She stretched lazily, enjoying the soft and cozy mattress beneath her. "Best bed in the world," she murmured with a satisfied smile, still half asleep. She turned to the side, hugging the pillow, which, oddly, had muscles. Her eyebrows furrowed. Something was off. She slowly opened her eyes, blinking against the morning light. The first thing she saw was a firm, well-built chest rising and falling with each breath. The second thing she saw was Henry Ford, wide-eyed, staring at her as if he had seen a ghost. Lily's brain froze for 3 whole seconds. Then she shot out of bed, tripping over the sheets and falling to her knees on the floor. "What are you doing in my room?" she screamed, panic clear in her voice. Henry sat up, rubbed his face, and let out an exhausted sigh. "In your room?" "Lily, this is my room." She blinked rapidly, her breath still uneven. "What?" She looked around. The place didn't seem familiar. The curtains were different, the carpet was a different color. Then her eyes landed on the perfectly folded suit on a chair. And at that moment, reality hit her like a truck. "Oh no. Oh yes." Lily covered her face with her hands, feeling the heat rush up her neck. "I walked into the wrong room." Henry crossed his arms, still watching her like he was analyzing a faulty piece of code. "Looks like it. But I didn't do it on purpose," she exclaimed, feeling panic rising. "I figured, Lily. Otherwise, I would have already called security." She opened her mouth to argue, but quickly closed it. That made sense. Henry gave her a critical look. "Answer me one thing. Do you remember anything from last night?" A chill ran down Lily's spine. "Depends. What do you mean by anything?" Henry didn't answer right away. He still seemed to be processing the situation, as if trying to convince himself this wasn't actually happening. You woke up smiling. Lily froze. I what? You were smiling, like someone who had the best sleep of their life. Her face heated up instantly. That doesn't mean anything. I hope not. An awkward silence filled the room. Lily needed to get out of there. She started searching for her shoes, her hair a mess, her expression pure terror. All right, this never happened. No one will ever know, and I'm leaving right now. Great idea. Lily almost sighed in relief, until a knock at the door. She froze on the spot. So did Henry. Mr. Ford? A woman's voice echoed from the other side. Lily turned pale. That was a warning shot from the universe, she muttered to herself. Henry stood up and looked straight at her. Hide. What? Now, Lily frantically looked around. Where? Behind the couch. No, too obvious. In the closet. What if I get stuck? Then under the bed, Lily. Just go. She dove under the bed at the exact moment Henry opened the door. Natalie, a coworker, stood there with an enthusiastic expression. Good morning, Mr. Ford. Sorry to bother you so early, but… She paused, looked at Henry, then looked at him again. You look different. Henry narrowed his eyes. Different how? Like, you didn't sleep well. Henry kept his usual impassive expression. It's just the lighting in the room. Natalie blinked, skeptical. Right? Well, I just came to let you know breakfast is ready. Great. Now if you'll excuse me… Oh, one more thing. Have you seen Lily? She disappeared after dinner, and I thought she might be with you. Henry didn't move. Under the bed, Lily was paralyzed. No, Henry answered firmly. I haven't seen Lily. Strange. But all right. See you later, Mr. Ford. As soon as Henry closed the door, Lily crawled out of her hiding spot, her hair still a mess and her dignity nowhere to be found. That was a nightmare. I completely agree, she sighed, grabbing her shoes. It's decided. I'm going to my room, forgetting all of this, and moving on with my life like nothing ever happened. Henry crossed his arms and watched her for a moment. Probably the best decision, Lily nodded. Great. So, I'm leaving. She turned on her heels, ready to flee the room as fast as possible, but before she could reach the door, Henry called her name, Lily. She stopped. Yes? A brief silence. Then Henry said in an overly casual tone, If you plan on walking into the wrong room again tonight, at least knock first. Lily turned to him, shocked. Are you joking about this? Henry tilted his head slightly. Maybe. She squinted at him. I am never drinking around you again. And then she stormed out, determined to erase that night from her memory. But deep down, Lily knew. This would never be forgotten. Let's play a little prank on those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who got this far will understand. Now let's continue the story. Lily walked through the resort hallways like she was fleeing a crime scene. If anyone saw her at that moment, they would probably think she had done something terrible. And in a way she had. What a disaster. She murmured to herself, gripping her room key as she tried to act normal. In her mind, there were only two objectives at that moment. 1. Get to her room without anyone noticing. 2. Pretend last night never happened. Simple. Straightforward. Reasonable. But the moment she turned the corner into the main hallway, she ran right into Natalie. Lily! Her friend almost shouted, startling her. Lily tried to look calm. She failed miserably. Hi, Natalie. What are you doing here so early? Early? It's almost 10 in the morning. You disappeared last night. Where were you? Lily froze. Her brain scrambled in panic, searching for the perfect answer, but her mouth acted faster. I slept. Natalie narrowed her eyes. Really? Because your hair is a mess, your clothes are wrinkled, and you look like you just saw a ghost. Lily let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, rough night of sleep. Natalie crossed her arms. I'm almost certain you were with Henry. Lily's heart nearly stopped. What? Why would you think that? Because I went to his room a few minutes ago, and he seemed off too. A cold sweat ran down Lily's neck. Off how? Like someone trying to hide something. Lily swallowed hard. Well, maybe he just slept badly too. Natalie narrowed her eyes even more. Lily, you're not hiding anything, are you? Of course not. Are you sure? Because you seem nervous. I am not nervous. You just yelled. Lily frowned. I'm hungry. That makes me irritable. Oh, that makes sense. Natalie finally backed off. Lily almost collapsed with relief. All right then, can we have breakfast now? Natalie grabbed her arm and dragged her down the hallway. Sure, and you're going to tell me all about this rough night of sleep. Lily could only smile, pretending everything was under control. But she knew the truth. Nothing was under control. Lily and Natalie walked into the breakfast hall and sat at a table near the balcony, overlooking the ocean. The aroma of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air. Normally, Lily would have enjoyed the moment, but she was too busy avoiding eye contact with Henry Ford. He was sitting a few tables ahead, talking to two investors, and as always, he looked impeccable. There was no sign that he had woken up just hours ago with a woman he barely knew lying beside him. "You're staring at Henry weirdly," Natalie commented. Lily nearly spit out her coffee. "I am not staring." "You are." "I'm not." "Then why is your hand shaking while holding your cup?" Lily immediately placed the cup on the table. "I'm just tense about today's meetings." Natalie nodded, accepting the excuse, but Lily knew that at any moment everything could fall apart. After breakfast, everyone headed to the resort's large conference room. It was an important event, final negotiations before the company merger. Lily tried to focus, but every time she looked up, her eyes met Henry's. And to her total frustration, he seemed to find it amusing. Every few minutes, Henry would glance at her and slightly tilt his head, as if saying, "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" Lily wanted to bury her face in her papers and disappear. In the middle of a discussion about shares, Henry finally spoke to her directly. "Lily, could you review these reports for me?" His tone was serious, professional, but there was a slight gleam in his eyes, like he was enjoying this way too much. Lily tightened her grip on her pen and kept her composure. "Yes, Mr. Ford." He gave a barely noticeable smile, and in that moment, Lily knew. He wasn't going to let her forget this anytime soon. When the meeting ended, Lily tried to slip away, but before she could reach the door, Henry called her. "Miss Lily, can you join me for a moment?" She swallowed hard. Natalie looked at her curiously. "Tell me what that was about later." Then Lily followed Henry. He led her to a private room, shut the door, and turned to face her. "We need to talk." Lily crossed her arms. "If this is about this morning, I'm already pretending it never happened." Henry smiled. "I noticed. The problem is, I haven't forgotten." Lily's stomach twisted. "What do you mean by that?" Henry leaned in slightly, studying her reaction. "Do you think if we ignore it, it'll go away?" "Yes." "That's unfortunate, because now that you accidentally walked into my room, do you know what people will say if they find out?" Lily tensed up. "No one can find out." Henry crossed his arms. "Then I suggest you make sure no one gets suspicious." Lily frowned. "That sounds like a threat." Henry smirked. "No, just a reminder." Lily took a deep breath. "Do you want something from me?" He studied her for a long moment before replying. "Just cooperation." Lily had no idea what that meant, but something in his expression told her this wasn't over. Lily walked out of the room, her heart pounding. What did Henry mean by cooperation? And worse, why did he look so calm while she was on the verge of a meltdown? She walked through the resort's hallways, trying to clear her head before meeting Natalie for lunch. She needed to act natural, stay composed, and pretend everything was under control. But the truth? Nothing was under control. When she entered the restaurant, Natalie was already at the table, waving her over. Lily took a deep breath and walked toward her, forcing a smile. "You took forever. What did Henry want to talk about?" Natalie asked, serving herself some salad. Lily hesitated for a moment before answering. "Nothing much, just work stuff." Natalie raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "Right. If that's all, then why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" Lily laughed, trying to shake off the tension. "I'm just tired, that's all." But as soon as she started eating, she felt someone's gaze on her. She looked up and saw Henry sitting a few tables away, discreetly watching her while talking to another businessman. It was a quick, sharp glance, as if he were waiting for something. A chill ran down Lily's spine. He was testing her. She looked away and focused on her plate, determined to act like nothing was happening. But Henry wouldn't let it go that easily. After lunch, Lily went back to her room to review some reports before the evening cocktail event. She had just sat down when the room phone rang. She hesitated before picking it up. "Hello. Come to the terrace." Now, Henry's voice was low and firm, leaving no room for discussion. Before she could respond, he hung up. Lily stared at the phone, her stomach twisting. Something was definitely wrong. Sighing, she got up and headed to the resort's terrace, where she found Henry leaning against the railing, looking out at the ocean. He didn't turn immediately. He just kept staring at the horizon, as if carefully choosing his words. "Are you hiding something from me, Lily?" She frowned, crossing her arms. "What do you mean by that?" Henry finally turned, his gaze analyzing her every reaction. I mean that since this morning, you've been avoiding me like you've committed a crime. Lily scoffed. I'm not avoiding you. I'm just trying to avoid a scandal. Henry narrowed his eyes, clearly unsatisfied with her answer. That's interesting, because now the investors are curious about us. Lily blinked, confused. What do you mean? Henry leaned in slightly. A rumor is going around that we spent the night together. Lily's stomach dropped. What? But how? Someone saw you leaving my room this morning. A chill ran down Lily's spine. Who? Henry crossed his arms. Does it matter? What matters is that now the investors think there's something between us. And, surprisingly, it's working in our favor. Lily looked even more confused. What do you mean? Henry sighed, as if explaining something obvious. The Callahans, the investors we're negotiating with, value stability and trust in business partners. Now that they think we're in a relationship, they're even more inclined to close the deal. Lily blinked several times. That's ridiculous. Maybe. But it's a fact. So what do you want me to do? Henry gave a half smile. I want you to pretend to be my girlfriend for the rest of the trip. Lily choked on air. What? Exactly what you heard. She laughed in disbelief. This is crazy. Henry didn't seem fazed. Maybe. But you want this deal to go through, don't you? Lily opened her mouth but couldn't find a solid argument. Ford Enterprises needed this contract, and Henry knew she was dedicated enough to her job not to let it slip away. She started, but her voice faltered. Henry took a step forward. It doesn't have to be anything over the top. Just a few appearances together, social dinners, strategic smiles. After the trip, we go our separate ways. Lily's head was spinning. You're asking me to pretend to be your girlfriend in front of a group of investors. Yes, she stared at him for a long moment, and to her total horror, a part of her was curious to see where this would lead. If I do this, the deal will be signed, and no one will ever know about this morning in my room. Lily felt the weight of the situation settle on her. She had no other choice. Fine. But this ends when we get back home. Henry smiled. Perfect. Lily sighed. Something told her she was stepping into dangerous territory. But for some reason, she couldn't step back. Lily felt the weight of her decision as she walked through the resort, trying to process everything she had just agreed to. She was about to pretend to be her boss's girlfriend. It sounded like something out of a bad movie, but here she was, about to play the biggest corporate lie of her life. When she got to her room, she collapsed onto the bed and covered her face with her hands. How had she gotten herself into this? One less glass of wine, and maybe she'd be having a peaceful day instead of dealing with this surreal situation. A knock on the door made her jump. Lily, open the door. Henry's voice echoed from the other side. She took a deep breath and stood up. When she opened the door, she found him leaning against the doorframe, as impeccable as always, as if the previous night had never happened. I hope you've already taken in the plan, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Lily closed the door and crossed her arms. You act like it's simple. Henry gave her a sharp look. Isn't it? Lily scoffed. We're boss and assistant. We have absolutely nothing in common besides work. How do you expect us to be convincing? He raised an eyebrow. First, we need to set some rules. You have to look comfortable around me. That's so smiles. You can't look bothered every time you're with me. Easy for you to say, she muttered. Henry ignored her and continued. Also, subtle gestures are necessary. Nothing exaggerated, but a little closeness, a touch on the shoulder, something that feels natural. Lily looked at him as if he had grown a second head. I can barely imagine greeting you without looking like a robot. Henry sighed. That's why we're talking. Practice makes perfect. You want me to rehearse a fake relationship with you? I want you to be convincing. Don't you think it's better to practice with me than fail in front of the investors? Lily rolled her eyes but knew he was right. Fine. But if this goes wrong, it was your idea. He gave a small smirk, as if he was certain it wouldn't. Tonight's cocktail party will be our first test. Lily wasn't sure why that made her stomach tighten. As the sun set, Lily dressed for the cocktail party. She chose an elegant but modest blue dress. She didn't want to draw attention for the wrong reasons. When she stepped out of her room, she found Henry waiting for her in the hallway. He was wearing a dark suit, as impeccable as ever. Ready? He asked. She took a deep breath. What could possibly go wrong? Henry smiled, and that only made her more nervous. They entered the cocktail lounge together. Lily tried to act naturally, but she knew many eyes were on them. The Callahan investors were already there, and one of them, a middle-aged man named Charles, smiled as he saw them. "Henry? Lily? What a pleasant surprise to see you together." Henry gave a polite smile. "We're enjoying the trip." Charles looked at Lily with interest. "So is it true what they're saying? You two are together?" Lily's heart pounded, but before she could answer, Henry placed an arm around her waist, a light touch, but surprisingly natural. "Yes," Henry replied without hesitation. "We're together." Lily held her breath for a moment, but managed to smile convincingly. "It was unexpected, but it's been great." Charles chuckled. "Well, I must say, this only strengthens our confidence in the partnership." Lily had no idea how to respond to that, so she just smiled and tried to look comfortable. Henry, on the other hand, seemed completely in control of the situation. "Shall we get something to drink?" he suggested, guiding Lily through the room. Once they were far enough from the crowd, Lily murmured to him, "How do you make this look so easy?" He raised an eyebrow. "The trick is not to overthink it," she scoffed. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one pretending to like someone who treats you like an office assistant instead of a human being." Henry leaned slightly toward her. "I never said I didn't like you, Lily." She blinked, caught off guard by that response. But before she could react, they were interrupted by another group of investors. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, wine glasses, and polite laughter. Lily was doing better than she expected, and to her complete surprise, being close to Henry wasn't as uncomfortable as she had imagined. But then, something unexpected happened. While they were talking to a couple of investors, Henry slid his hand over Lily's, discreetly but enough to make her hold her breath. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, something felt different. He wasn't just pretending. Or maybe he was just pretending too well. Lily felt her stomach twist. She was starting to wonder if, in the middle of this game, she might end up losing to her own emotions. Lily couldn't shake off the strange feeling that had settled in her ever since Henry held her hand. It was such a simple gesture, an almost insignificant detail, but something inside her had shifted. She had spent the past few years working for this cold, demanding man, always keeping a strict professional boundary between them. Now, suddenly, they were faking a relationship. And worse, he was making the lie way too convincing. The cocktail party went on for a few more hours, and Lily found herself feeling more and more comfortable around Henry. At first, it was hard to force smiles and act as if she was involved with him, but after a while, her reactions started to feel more natural. And that's what scared her. "I think we managed to fool everyone," Lily murmured as they walked through the resort's garden after the event. Henry glanced at her, a slight smile on his lips. "I wouldn't call it fooling. We simply helped reinforce a misunderstanding that was already circulating." "A misunderstanding that you're taking full advantage of," Lily shot back, crossing her arms. Henry stopped and turned to face her, his intense gaze locking onto hers. "I'm not the only one benefiting from this. You like a challenge, Lily, and now you're playing a game you never imagined." Lily scoffed, looking away. "Don't think you know me that well." Henry stepped closer, and Lily felt the air around her grow heavier. "I know you more than you think." She blinked, her heart skipping a beat. Why was he standing so close? Before she could respond, Henry tilted his head slightly and smiled. "Are you afraid of having a little fun?" Lily's eyes widened. "This has nothing to do with fun." "What if it did?" Lily opened her mouth to protest, but couldn't find the words. She needed to remind herself that this was all just an act. But then, Henry's gaze briefly flickered to her lips before meeting her eyes again. Lily held her breath. "Good night, Lily," he said, his voice lower than usual. And with that, he simply turned and walked back toward the resort, as if he hadn't just completely unsettled her. Lily stood there for a while, trying to process what had just happened. Was this still part of the plan? Or was Henry taking this charade to a level she hadn't anticipated? She returned to her room, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She needed to sleep and forget all about it. But even when she lay in bed and closed her eyes, the image of Henry looking at her like that remained in her mind. This fake arrangement was becoming dangerous, and Lily wasn't sure if she would come out of it unscathed. The next day began with an important meeting. The contract negotiation was in its final stage, and Lily needed to stay completely focused to ensure nothing went wrong. But how could she focus when Henry now seemed to enjoy teasing her? During the meeting, he made a point to sit right beside her, close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed. He spoke as he always did, with that natural authority, but every now and then he would glance at her, as if testing her limits. Lily tried to ignore him, but it was impossible. Things only got worse when, during the meeting break, Charles Callahan approached them with a pleased smile. "I find it admirable how you two manage to balance work and your relationship so well," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. Lily forced a smile. "It's a challenge, but we manage." Beside her, Henry nodded, his expression perfectly composed. Lily is an incredible professional. Working with her while also sharing something personal has been interesting. Lily felt her face heat up. He was making this far too convincing. Charles smiled even wider. When two people have genuine chemistry, everything flows naturally. Lily let out a nervous laugh, but before she could respond, Henry casually placed his hand on the small of her back, so subtly that only she seemed to notice. Her heart raced. Henry was playing with fire. "Well, I won't interrupt the lovebirds. See you both in the next meeting," Charles said, walking away, clearly satisfied. Lily waited until he was out of earshot before turning to Henry. "What was that?" Henry raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "What exactly?" "You're overdoing it." Henry smirked. "I don't see it that way." Lily crossed her arms, frustrated. "This is still a business arrangement, Henry. I'm not a piece in this game for you to toy with." He leaned in slightly, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Then stop acting like you're affected." A shiver ran down Lily's spine. He knew exactly what he was doing to her. But before she could argue, Henry pulled away and returned to the meeting as if nothing had happened. Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. He was playing a game with her. But if Henry Ford thought he could win this game alone, he was very mistaken. If he wanted to play, then she would play too. And he had no idea what he was about to face. Lily took a deep breath and straightened her posture, determined. If Henry wanted to test her limits, she knew how to play the game too. She wouldn't just react to his provocations, she would strike back. The rest of the meeting went on as usual, but now Lily was paying close attention to every move Henry made, watching him just as intently as he watched her. When the meeting ended, everyone was invited to an informal lunch on the resort's terrace. Charles Callahan insisted that Lily and Henry sit at his table, along with other investors. "You two make an impressive couple," Charles commented as he served himself from a fine dish. "Balancing work and personal life. Now that's rare in our world." Lily glanced briefly at Henry before responding. "It's all about balance and respect, Charles," she said with a smile. Henry kept his expression calm, but Lily noticed the slight raise of his eyebrow, as if he was curious about where she was going with this. She leaned slightly in her chair, just enough for her leg to lightly brush against Henry's under the table. The contact was barely noticeable, but it was enough to make him pause for a second while cutting his food. Lily held back a satisfied smile. Henry didn't pull away. In fact, he seemed to welcome the challenge. As the conversation continued, Lily realized Henry was relaxed, but not off guard. He knew she was the one leading the game now, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely intrigued by it. "So Lily, what's it like being involved with one of the most sought-after businessmen in the industry?" Charles asked, breaking the silence. Lily smiled gently and rested her hand on Henry's arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Oh, Henry might seem intimidating at work, but when he lets himself unwind, he's incredibly thoughtful." She let her fingers lightly slide over the fabric of his suit, feeling him go completely still beside her. He hadn't expected that move. Lily turned to him, watching for his reaction. For a brief moment, she saw something different in Henry's eyes. Something unguarded, like she had just surprised him for the first time. But Henry Ford was not the type to stay behind in a game. When lunch ended and the guests began to leave, Henry gently took Lily's hand, helping her up. But before she could step away, he slid his hand to the curve of her waist, holding it there just a second longer than necessary. To anyone watching, the gesture seemed casual, but Lily knew instantly it was his way of responding to what she had done earlier. Her heart raced, but she wouldn't let him notice. Henry was testing her limits, and now she would do the same to him. Later, Lily decided to take a break from all the back and forth and headed to the resort's pool. The sun was warm, and all she wanted was to relax a bit before dinner that evening. But her peace didn't last long. As she settled into a lounge chair and began reading a book, a shadow blocked the sunlight. She looked up and saw Henry Ford standing there, dressed in a suit and sunglasses, watching her with a faint smile. "Taking a break?" he asked, crossing his arms. Lily closed her book and leaned back slightly, unhurried. "Is that still allowed, or is part of your plan to keep me on edge all the time?" Henry let out a small chuckle, something rare to see. "Looks like you finally understand the rules of the game." Lily smiled. "And it looks like you don't like when someone plays better than you." He sat down on the lounge chair beside her, loosening his tie. "I have to admit, I'm surprised." "Surprised that I'm not as predictable as you thought?" Henry removed his sunglasses and looked straight at her. "Surprised that you're enjoying this as much as I am." Lily opened her mouth to protest, but she couldn't deny it. As chaotic as the situation was, there was something electrifying in their dynamic. Something that went beyond the act they were playing. Before she could respond, Natalie came rushing toward her. "Lily, there you are. Dinner has been moved up. We need to get ready fast." Lily sighed and stood up. "Well, I guess this conversation will have to wait." Henry watched her for a moment, then slid his sunglasses back on. "I can't wait." Lily turned and walked toward her room, feeling Henry's gaze on her. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't just pretending anymore. Something was happening between them, and she wasn't sure she could stop it. Lily closed the door to her room and leaned against it for a few seconds, trying to collect her thoughts. She needed to remind herself that this was all just an act, a role she was playing to ensure the deal went through. But then, why was she starting to enjoy the game so much? Taking a deep breath, she walked over to her suitcase and picked out an elegant black dress for dinner. Something sophisticated but not over the top. She needed to look professional, yet with a touch of charm. Exactly how Henry wanted her to present herself. Once she was ready, she made her way down to the dining hall. The atmosphere was refined, with sparkling chandeliers and a subtle scent of spices in the air. She immediately recognized the investors scattered throughout the room, engaged in lively conversations with other business people. But when her eyes met Henry's, the air around her seemed to shift. He was impeccable, as always, dressed in a tailored black suit and wearing his usual confident expression. But there was something different in his gaze when he saw her, something Lily couldn't quite decipher. Before she could think too much about it, he was already by her side. "You look stunning," he said in a casual tone, as if it were the most natural comment in the world. Lily blinked a few times, surprised. "Thank you." Henry leaned in slightly, his sophisticated scent reaching her. "Ready for another round of this game?" She gave him a small smile. "Always." He offered his arm, and Lily took it, letting him guide her through the room. The investors seemed pleased to see them together, exchanging knowing glances and approving smiles. The merger between the companies was practically sealed, and everything indicated that Lily's presence at Henry's side had helped solidify the Callahans' trust. But the problem was that, more and more, Lily felt like she wasn't just pretending. Throughout dinner, Henry remained composed. He was attentive, smiled at the right moments, and made every gesture seem effortless. At one point, his hand brushed against hers so subtly that anyone else would have thought it was just an accident. But Lily knew it wasn't. With every little detail, the line between what was an act and what was real started to blur. She became even more aware of it when, after a celebratory toast, Henry leaned in to whisper in her ear, "You've been doing an incredible job." His voice was low and smooth, filled with something Lily couldn't quite define. She turned her head slightly, her lips just inches from his face. "So have you?" Henry's eyes flickered to her lips before meeting her gaze again. For a moment, it felt like something was actually going to happen. But then Charles Callahan approached with an enthusiastic expression, breaking the moment. "Well done, both of you. It looks like we'll have a signed contract by tomorrow morning." Lily immediately stepped back, straightening her posture and trying to ignore how fast her heart was beating. Henry smiled at Callahan, keeping his flawless composure. "That's great news. And I must say, seeing such a successful couple working together in such harmony is truly inspiring." Callahan added with a laugh. Lily forced a polite smile, but inside she felt like she was spinning. After dinner, she needed a moment alone. Slipping away from the room, she stepped out onto the resort's balcony, where the ocean breeze helped clear her thoughts. The problem was, all her thoughts revolved around Henry Ford. She couldn't deny that the attraction between them was real. The problem was, this had started as a game. And what if she was getting in too deep? She was lost in her own confusion when she heard footsteps behind her. Sneaking away from the celebration? She recognized the voice before even turning around. Just needed some air. Henry stopped beside her, leaning against the railing. "You're unusually quiet." She crossed her arms and looked at him. "Are we taking this too far?" Henry raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean the plan or something else?" Lily glanced away, unsure. Henry sighed and turned toward her, his expression more serious now. "What we're doing isn't a problem. The contract will be signed tomorrow. After that, we go back to our normal lives." Lily bit her lower lip, feeling a strange pang at those words. "So this ends tomorrow?" Henry didn't answer right away. He studied her for a moment, too long. "If that's what you want." Lily felt a tightness in her chest. She was supposed to want that. That had always been the plan. But for the first time, she wasn't sure. Because looking at Henry now, she had a feeling he wasn't so sure about the end of this game either. And that changed everything. Lily spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The plan was going exactly as it should. The contract would be signed in the morning, and after that, her life would go back to normal. So why did she feel like something was about to change? The way Henry looked at her, the way he held her hand just a little longer than necessary, the tone of his voice when he asked if this would all end tomorrow. Something about him had changed too. But Henry Ford was not an easy man to read. He never showed weakness, never revealed more than he wanted others to see. And that unsettled her. The next morning, Lily got ready for breakfast and headed down to the main hall. The atmosphere at the resort felt lighter now that everyone knew the deal between the companies would be sealed in just a few hours. She spotted Henry sitting at a table with Charles Callahan and other investors. He looked calm, but the moment she walked in, his eyes immediately found hers. Lily made her way to the table and sat beside him, feeling the familiar warmth of his presence. "Did you sleep well?" he asked casually. "Not really," Lily answered, keeping her voice low. "Any particular reason?" She hesitated, just thinking about all of this. Henry studied her for a moment, but didn't push. It will all be settled in a few hours. She knew that. And maybe that was exactly the problem. The meeting took place right after breakfast. Henry led the discussions with his usual confidence, and Lily stayed by his side, making sure everything went according to plan. When the contract was finally signed, Charles Callahan raised his glass for a toast. "I believe we made the right choice. And Henry, I must say, your partnership with Lily was a key factor in this decision." Lily forced a smile. She wanted to feel relieved. She should have felt relieved. But deep down, all she felt was a strange emptiness. The deal was done. The act had served its purpose. Now she and Henry could go their separate ways without anyone suspecting a thing. And yet, Lily couldn't quite accept that. Later, while everyone celebrated at the resort's bar, Lily slipped away to the beach for a while. She walked along the soft sand, feeling the ocean breeze and trying to ignore the strange heaviness pressing on her chest. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She knew who it was before she even turned around. Henry stopped beside her, his hands tucked into the pockets of his dress pants, the wind slightly ruffling his hair. "Hiding again?" Lily sighed. "Just needed a moment." Henry nodded, looking out at the horizon. "What happens after this?" she asked, without looking at him. Henry was silent for a few seconds before answering. "You go back to your life. I go back to mine." Lily let out a dry laugh. "Just like that?" Henry turned to face her. "That was the plan from the beginning." She nodded slowly, staring down at the sand beneath her feet. "And you? Are you just going to forget all of this?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Henry frowned slightly, as if trying to understand what she really meant. "Do you want me to forget?" Lily pressed her lips together. "I don't know." Henry stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. "Because if we're being honest, Lily, I haven't forgotten anything." She held her breath. Not even the fact that this was all just a game? Henry met her gaze, and something about him no longer felt like an act. Not even the fact that, at some point, it stopped being just a game. Lily felt the air leave her lungs. She wasn't imagining it. Something between them had changed. But if it was real, what did they do now? Henry lifted his hand to her face, holding her gently. "If you tell me this meant nothing to you, I'll let it go." Lily swallowed hard. She could lie. She could pretend none of this mattered. But she had been pretending for too long. I can't say that. Henry smiled slightly, as if he had already known the answer before she even admitted it. Then I guess we have a problem, Lily. She let out a soft laugh. And what would that be? He lowered his face closer to hers. I'm not ready to pretend this never happened. Before Lily could respond, Henry kissed her. And at that moment, the game was finally over. All that remained was the truth. Henry's lips met hers firmly, but without haste, as if he wanted to savor every second of the moment. She should have pulled away, reminded herself that this had only been a business arrangement, but everything inside her screamed otherwise. Before she realized it, her fingers were gripping the collar of his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was warm, intense, and completely unlike anything Lily had ever experienced before. She felt Henry's hands slide around her waist, holding her as if he never wanted to let go, and for the first time, she didn't want to leave either. But then, reality hit. Lily broke the kiss, breathing heavily. She stepped back, trying to regain control over her thoughts. This shouldn't be happening, she murmured. Henry kept his eyes closed for a moment before opening them, looking at her with an expression she had never seen on him before. Something vulnerable, something he rarely let show. But it did. She shook her head, still trying to process everything. This arrangement, it was just a lie. A performance. Henry ran a hand through his hair, as if trying to gather his own thoughts. It was a performance in the beginning, but Lily, don't ask me to pretend that's all it was. The way he said that made her heart race. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this was real. But then, the memory of who Henry was, a powerful, cold, and meticulous businessman, flashed through her mind. She wasn't like him. She didn't belong in his world. We need to think this through, Lily whispered, still fighting her own feelings. Henry watched her for a few seconds, his expression serious but understanding. If that's what you want. Lily nodded quickly, more to convince herself than him. Without another word, she turned and walked away from the beach, feeling the weight of every step in her heart. That night, Lily tried to avoid Henry as much as possible. During the farewell dinner, she sat as far away from him as she could, focusing on conversations with Natalie and other colleagues. But every time she glanced over, she saw Henry watching her discreetly, as if waiting for her to change her mind. But she couldn't. If she let this continue and later realized Henry didn't want the same thing as she did, it would be devastating. When dinner ended, she went up to her room and collapsed onto the bed, emotionally exhausted. All she wanted was to sleep and forget. But a few hours later, a soft knock on the door made her sit up immediately. Her heart pounded because she knew exactly who it was. Lily took a deep breath before getting up and opening the door. Henry stood there, no suit jacket, just a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a look that completely disarmed her. You can't run forever, Lily. She felt a lump in her throat. I'm not running. You are. He leaned against the doorframe. You feel the same way I do, and you're afraid of it. Lily looked away. This is complicated, Henry. It doesn't have to be. She frowned, exasperated. We work together. You're my boss. This would never work. Henry crossed his arms, leaning in slightly. What if I told you I'm willing to find a way to make it work? Lily stayed silent, feeling her resistance slowly crumble. Henry, he cut her off, his voice softer now. Lily, give me a chance, just one. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find a reason to say no, but she couldn't. So when she opened her eyes again, she finally gave in. One chance. The smile that spread across Henry's face was enough for Lily to know she was lost. And this time, she didn't want to be found. Lily woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. She had agreed to give Henry Ford a chance. The words still echoed in her mind, filled with silent promises and a terrifying uncertainty. She turned in bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened the night before. The kiss, his words, the way everything seemed about to change. She should have felt relieved. The contract was already signed, the plan completed. She just had to go home and move on with her life. But then, why did she feel like nothing would ever be the same again? Her phone vibrated beside the bed. She grabbed it quickly, expecting a message from Natalie. But it was Henry. Meet me at the lobby in 30 minutes. We're having brunch with the Callahans. Lily took a deep breath before getting up. It would be the first time they saw each other since last night. How would Henry act? And more importantly, how would she? When she arrived at the lobby, Henry was already there, leaning against one of the armchairs, eyes focused on his phone. The gray suit he wore made his presence even more striking, and for a second, Lily hesitated. But then he looked up and saw her. What unsettled her wasn't the intensity of his gaze, but the way he seemed to act as if nothing had changed. "Ready?" he asked, his voice calm. Lily tried to smile. "Yes." Without another word, he slightly extended his arm for her to walk beside him, and the two headed to the restaurant where they would meet the Callahans. Throughout the entire trip, Henry didn't mention the previous night, and that bothered her more than if he had. She wanted him to say something. Anything. But Henry Ford was a patient man. He knew she was still fighting her own feelings, and, for some reason, he was willing to wait. Brunch was calm. The Callahans were pleased, celebrating the signed contract, and Henry maintained his usual impeccable composure. He spoke with confidence, made sharp observations, and smiled at the right moments. But in between words, Lily noticed he was watching her. Not in an obvious way. Not for others to see, but for her. And that made her even more restless. "Lily, dear," Charles Callahan's wife said with a warm smile. "I have to say, it's inspiring to see how you and Henry work together in such harmony." Lily blinked, caught off guard by the comment. "Oh, thank you. You two really make a great pair." Lily felt Henry shift beside her. When she looked, she saw him smiling slightly. "Indeed," he said before taking a sip of his coffee. Lily couldn't tell if he was just keeping up the act or if he was starting to like the idea for real. Later, when they returned to the resort, Henry walked her to the elevator. Lily crossed her arms, feeling her heart beat faster. "You didn't say anything about last night?" Henry looked at her, calm. "Did you want me to?" She pressed her lips together, frustrated. "I don't know, but I expected some kind of reaction from you. You asked for time to think. I'm just respecting that." Lily sighed. "This is frustrating." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She looked directly at him. "Because I expected you to try to convince me." Henry took a step forward, closing the space between them. "Lily, you're already convinced. You just don't want to admit it." She felt a shiver run through her body. The elevator arrived at her floor, and the doors opened. Henry tilted his head slightly. "I'll wait for your answer." Then he walked away, leaving her standing there, feeling as if the ground beneath her had disappeared. Night fell, and Lily still couldn't organize her thoughts. Their flight back was scheduled for the next day, and she knew she couldn't put off the decision much longer. Was she really willing to take the risk? Her phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't Henry. It was Natalie. "Want to grab a drink at the bar?" "Last night here." Lily hesitated for a moment before replying. "I'll meet you there." Maybe getting out for a bit would help clear her mind. When she arrived at the bar, Natalie was already seated, a colorful drink in hand. "Finally," she said with a smile. "I thought you were going to bail." Lily laughed, sitting beside her. "I just needed some time to think." Natalie leaned in, intrigued. "Thinking about your boss looking at you like he wants to devour you?" Lily's eyes widened. "What?" "Oh, don't play dumb," Natalie teased. "Henry Ford isn't exactly easy to read, but I know when someone is attracted to someone else." Lily rolled her eyes. "It's not that simple." "But it should be." Natalie took a sip of her drink. "Lily, sometimes we complicate things that don't need to be complicated." Lily took a deep breath. "What if it doesn't work out?" Natalie shrugged. "What if it does?" Her words echoed in Lily's mind. And then she saw Henry walk into the bar. At first, he didn't look directly at her, but she knew the exact moment he noticed her presence. He moved slowly through the room and sat at a table in the back, alone. And that's when Lily knew. If she didn't do something now, if she didn't make a decision, she'd lose her chance. She stood up before she could even think about it. "Where are you going?" Natalie asked. Lily just looked at her and smiled. "To take care of something I should have taken care of already." Natalie laughed. Finally. Henry was holding a glass of whiskey when Lily stopped by his table. He slowly lifted his gaze, watching her. Lily crossed her arms. "Still waiting for my answer?" He set his glass down. "Yes." She took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she had. "I don't want this to end." Henry's expression finally changed. He stood up, facing her. "Are you sure?" Lily nodded. "I am." He smiled slightly. "Then now you finally understand." She frowned. "Understand what?" He reached up, gently brushing his hand against her cheek. That this was never just a game. Before Lily could respond, Henry pulled her in for a kiss. This time, there were no more doubts. They had crossed the line, and neither of them wanted to go back. Henry's kiss was firm, certain, and Lily felt lost in a whirlwind of emotions. She already knew that giving in to him was risky, but at that moment, she no longer cared about the risks. His lips explored hers with precision, unhurried yet intense, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. And maybe he had. When they finally pulled away, Lily felt her heart pounding against her chest. Henry kept his gaze locked on hers, his dark eyes holding something she couldn't immediately decipher. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," he murmured. Lily licked her lips, still trying to catch her breath. "I think I do." Henry gave a faint smile and ran his fingertips gently over her face before stepping back. "We need to talk." Lily nodded. "Yes, but not here." Without another word, Henry took her hand and led her out of the bar. They walked through the resort in silence until they reached the beach, where the waves rolled softly onto the sand. Lily took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. "I'm not the kind of person who jumps into something without thinking," she began, turning to face him. Henry crossed his arms, his expression serious. "I know that." She hesitated for a second before continuing. "And neither are you." Henry let out a low sigh. "No, but for some reason, with you, everything feels different." A shiver ran down Lily's spine. "Henry, if we do this, there's no going back." He took a step closer. "I don't want to go back." Lily swallowed hard. "But what about work? Everything we've built?" Henry gently cupped her chin, tilting her face so she had to look at him. "If I say I'm willing to take the risk, are you?" She was silent for a moment, trying to process the weight of that question. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes." Henry let out a breath, as if he had been holding on to that answer for a long time. "Then we're in this together." Lily didn't reply, but when he pulled her in for another kiss, she knew her life would never be the same. The next morning, Lily woke up with a different kind of weight on her chest, a good weight. They had returned to their separate rooms after their conversation on the beach, but now there was something in the air between them. Something inevitable. Their flight home was scheduled in just a few hours, and Lily knew that once they were back to their work routine, things would get more complicated. But this time, she didn't want to run. She was finishing packing her suitcase when the phone rang. It was Henry. "Meet me in the lobby before we leave for the airport." His voice was low, but there was something different in his tone. "All right," she replied. When she stepped into the lobby, Henry was already there, looking as polished as ever. But when his eyes met hers, he smiled. It was a small, subtle smile, but real, and that made Lily's heart race. They left for the airport together, and the flight home was smooth, filled with quiet moments that carried unspoken meaning. This time, Henry didn't avoid sitting next to her. And this time, Lily didn't want to avoid anything. Back in the city, their driver dropped them off at the company building, where employees were already waiting with stacks of reports and a full schedule of meetings. The routine swallowed them up quickly, and for the first time, Lily felt like she was living two lives at once. During the workday, Henry kept his usual serious and professional demeanor as if nothing had changed. But Lily knew something had. The lingering glances, the subtle touches when no one was looking, and most of all, the silent anticipation of what would come next. It was only at the end of the day, after everyone had left, that Henry finally crossed the invisible line they had maintained all day. He stepped into Lily's office and closed the door behind him. "We survived the first day," he said with a slight smile. Lily chuckled softly. "At this rate, no one will ever suspect a thing." Henry tilted his head slightly. "And do you want no one to suspect?" Lily crossed her arms. "I'm not sure yet." He stepped closer, his eyes darkening just a bit. "I can wait." She bit her lip, a shiver running through her. "But for how long?" Henry smirked slightly. "As long as it takes for you to realize you don't have to run anymore." Lily closed her eyes for a second. He was right. She had been running, but this time she didn't want to run anymore. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Henry waiting, patient as always. And then she made her decision. Lily stepped forward, closing the space between them. "I think I already have." Henry raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She smiled. "Yes." Henry leaned in slightly. "Then I guess we finally won this game." Lily felt her heart race as he gently cupped her face. "Henry, Lily," and then he kissed her. This time, there were no more barriers. This time, there was no more game. It was just the two of them. Henry's kiss was different from all the others. It wasn't just desire or impulse. It was a silent commitment. Lily felt the warmth of his palm on her face, his fingers softly sliding to the back of her neck. She gripped his shirt tightly, as if afraid that if she let go, everything would disappear. But it didn't. When the kiss ended, Henry rested his forehead against hers and took a deep breath. "You know what this means, right?" he murmured. Lily smiled softly. "Yes." Henry held her face with a gentle touch, as if he wanted to memorize every detail of that moment. "Then there's no going back." She laughed, feeling the tension of the past few days finally fade away. "I was never good at going back." Henry gave a small smile, but then his expression turned serious. "We need to talk about how this is going to work." Lily nodded. "I agree. We can't mix work and personal life in a way that harms the company." Henry crossed his arms, studying her. "So, you want to keep this a secret?" She hesitated. "At least at the beginning. I don't want people thinking it will affect our professional relationship." Henry watched her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But you should know I'm not the type who likes to hide things." Lily smiled. "I know." The clock in the corner of the room showed it was almost 9 at night. Everyone had already left and the office was quiet. Henry grabbed his jacket from the chair and put it on. "I'll take you home." Lily raised an eyebrow. "I can go by myself." Henry picked up her bag from the desk and handed it to her, ignoring the comment. "I know, but I want to go with you." Lily shook her head with a smile but didn't argue. They walked together to the parking garage, and Henry opened the car door for her. As the car moved through the brightly lit streets of the city, Lily looked out the window, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. "What are you thinking?" Henry asked, keeping his eyes on the road. Lily sighed. "That this is a huge risk." He smiled slightly. "You've taken risks with me before. None like this." Henry stopped the car at a red light and turned to her. "Lily, do you trust me?" She looked at him for a few seconds before answering. "Yes." The light turned green and Henry kept driving, but Lily knew that simple question had sealed something between them. When they arrived at her apartment, Lily opened the car door but hesitated before getting out. She looked at Henry, who was watching her in silence. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. His eyes darkened slightly. "Do you want me to?" Lily took a deep breath. "I do." Henry turned off the engine and stepped out of the car. They entered her apartment, and Lily turned on the lights. The place was cozy, decorated simply but elegantly. "It's exactly how I imagined it would be," Henry said. Lily frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked around. "Your apartment. It has your essence." She laughed. "Was that a compliment?" Henry smiled. "Maybe." Lily took off her shoes and sat on the couch. "Would you like some coffee?" Henry loosened his tie and sat beside her. "I'd prefer something stronger." Lily raised an eyebrow. "You want a drink?" He looked at her intently. "No, I want something else." Lily's heart pounded. She knew exactly what he meant. Henry reached up and touched her face, his thumb gently caressing her cheek. "Lily." She didn't let him finish. She pulled him into a kiss that said everything she wasn't yet ready to put into words. The night passed in kisses, smiles, and silent promises. And for the first time, Lily felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning, Lily woke up to the familiar smell of fresh coffee. She slowly opened her eyes and found Henry in the kitchen, wearing only the pants from his suit from the night before, making coffee. The scene was so unexpected that she blinked a few times, making sure she wasn't dreaming. "Good morning." Henry glanced over his shoulder, a small smile on his lips. Lily sat up in bed, still a little dazed. "You know how to make coffee?" "I know how to do a lot of things." She laughed and got up, walking over to him. "This feels strange." "What does?" "Seeing you like this, in my kitchen, without your perfect suit, looking normal." Henry tilted his head slightly. "Does that bother you?" Lily smiled. "No, it just surprises me." He poured a cup for her and one for himself. "I think you'll have to get used to it." She picked up the cup and took a sip, feeling the hot, strong coffee slide down her throat. And then she realized she wanted to get used to this. She wanted to wake up and see him there. She wanted stolen kisses before work. She wanted late-night conversations on the couch. She wanted it all. Henry noticed her silence and narrowed his eyes. "You're thinking about something." Lily gave a small smile. "Yes." "And can I know what it is?" She looked him in the eyes and said, without hesitation, that this might actually work. Henry set his cup down on the counter and stepped closer, holding her face in his hands. "Lily, I never had any doubts." She smiled, feeling lighter than she ever had before. "Then I guess we're on the right path." Henry pulled her in for a soft kiss. "I think so." That morning, Lily knew she would never run away again. The romance between Lily and Henry blossomed quickly after that morning in her apartment. What had once been a game of teasing and challenges had turned into something much bigger, much more real. They kept their relationship a secret at the office, at least for a while. Henry remained the same demanding and meticulous boss, and Lily was still his efficient and determined assistant. But behind the scenes, between meetings and business trips, exchanged glances and subtle touches told the real story. The days were intense, but the nights belonged to them. When they weren't traveling for work, they spent time together in the simplest, most authentic ways. Cozy dinners at Lily's apartment, where Henry, despite insisting he could cook, always ended up ordering takeout. Weekends at country houses, far from the city, where they could laugh freely and share stories they had never told anyone. Each day by his side only confirmed what Lily already knew. She was in love. And to her surprise, so was Henry. One evening, after a long day at the office, Lily and Henry were curled up on her couch. She wore a comfortable sweatshirt and he was in a t-shirt and pajama pants, far from the powerful Henry Ford the world knew. "You never thought we'd end up like this, did you?" Lily asked, nestled against his chest. Henry chuckled. "Not even in my most unlikely calculations." She lifted her head and smiled. "So tell me, when did you realize you were in love with me?" Henry frowned as if analyzing the question. "I think it was that night at the resort when you stumbled into my room drunk and snored next to me." Lily pulled away, shocked. "I do not snore." "Oh, you do? You liar." "Okay, maybe just a little." She crossed her arms, pretending to be offended, but soon laughed along with him. "Now seriously." Henry took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "I think I knew I loved you long before that. Maybe from the moment I realized you weren't afraid to challenge me." Lily felt her heart race. "Henry," but he placed a finger over her lips. "And that's why I planned something special for tonight." Lily blinked, confused. "What?" Henry smiled and, slowly, got down on one knee. Lily's world stopped. She covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide. "Henry, what are you?" He pulled something from his pocket. A ring. But not just any ring. It was completely crooked, as if it had been poorly made. Lily frowned, trying to understand. "Is that a ring, or did you try to make an abstract sculpture?" Henry sighed dramatically. "This is what happens when you try to make a wedding ring yourself." "You made this?" "Yes, and I almost lost a finger in the process." Lily laughed so hard she had to lean on the couch for support. "Henry, you're a millionaire. You could have bought the most perfect ring in the world," he smiled. "But I wanted it to be unique. Like us." Lily felt her eyes fill with tears. "Are you serious?" Henry held her hand firmly. "Lily, you've always challenged me, annoyed me, made me laugh, and made me feel something I never had before. I know work and love don't usually mix, but we never followed the rules anyway. So how about we break one more?" He took a deep breath and looked straight into her eyes. "Will you marry me?" Lily swallowed hard. Her heart pounded in her chest, tears threatened to fall, and at the same time she had never felt so happy. "I want to say yes," she said, taking the crooked ring and sliding it onto her finger. "But can we at least buy a ring that doesn't look like a piece of metal that got run over?" Henry laughed and pulled her into a kiss. "So that's a yes?" "Yes, you crazy man." They kissed again, and Lily knew this was just the beginning of everything. The wedding day arrived. The event took place at a romantic winery with string lights hanging between the trees and a rustic altar surrounded by white flowers. Lily looked stunning in a light, elegant dress, simple but beautiful. She was never a fan of overly elaborate gowns, and Henry knew that. In fact, he was the one who insisted she wear exactly what she wanted. As she walked down the aisle, her heart raced when she saw Henry waiting for her. He stood in a perfectly tailored black suit, but what truly caught her attention was the way he looked at her. A look of pure devotion. When Lily finally stood in front of him, Henry whispered, "You look beautiful." She smiled. "And you look like someone who finally accepted that he can't control everything." He chuckled softly. "With you, I never could." The officiant began the ceremony, but to Lily and Henry, it felt like they were the only two people there. When it was time for the vows, Henry took her hand and said, "Lily, you are the person who challenged everything I thought I knew about love. You taught me that life isn't just about work, contracts, and numbers. With you, I learned that the unexpected can be the best thing that ever happens. So today, in front of everyone, I promise to keep breaking the rules by your side. I promise to love you through the good days and the bad, and I promise never to try making a ring by myself again." Everyone laughed, and Lily wiped away a tear before responding. "Henry, I never imagined that my cold and controlling boss would become the love of my life. You annoy me, you challenge me, you make me laugh when I don't want to, and you make me happier than anyone ever could. So today, I promise to love you, even when you complain that reports are late, even when you insist you know how to cook, and especially when you forget to take the lid off your coffee before drinking and burn yourself." Henry laughed, and the guests joined in. The officiant smiled and announced, "You may kiss the bride." Henry didn't hesitate. He cupped Lily's face and kissed her as if it were the first time, as if it were the last, as if it were forever. The guests cheered, and as they pulled apart, Lily looked at him and whispered, "We're really married." Henry smiled, holding her hand, "And this was the best contract I've ever signed." Lily laughed and kissed him again, knowing that from that moment on, they didn't have to play games anymore, because their love wasn't a game. It was forever. What did you think of Lily and Henry's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.